Many people in the modern era do not know the difference between simple manners and etiquette. In reality, the differences are quite crucial and used to separate the Cretans from the gentry in past centuries. On a regular day, one would generally use manners over etiquette. Manners are used when one does something that would not be considered correct in etiquette in order to spare another's feelings. Etiquette is following the book as to how to act in social situations. Etiquette includes elocution, correct jests, and acting in public. Many people in the 18th and 19th, even up to the 20th centuries, would use etiquette over manners if they were better off in society. I personally prefer to use etiquette over manners. The change in etiquette over the years has been dramatic and sloping. Many believe etiquette is becoming a form of dying art in today's society, and I personally know many who agree with these critics. Elocution, the art of speaking confidently, is a large part of etiquette. One of the major ideas behind elocution is the ideal of being able to speak in front of larger audiences confidently and coolly, in essence, getting rid of nasty side effects of nervousness in speaking. Many stances can be taken to help with this goal, such as standing with a narrow frame versus a wide frame. People associated a wide frame, such as standing with the legs splayed, with a baby's walk, or an intoxicated man's saunter, thereby making it a negative and a supportive stance. The evil wide stance is better known twin sister, the narrow stance, was considerably more popular. There was a common practice that stated any peculiar or unsavory habits would unconsciously surface in your presentation. This led to a very near perfect recitation for many people who would work for hours to clean their presentations. People who taught elocution classes would drill their clients for hours on proper positions and breathing exercises. If you could not speak well, you were very rarely taken seriously. Poor enunciation may have resulted in others thinking you were an idiot. There are those who could not speak well, and were often not bothered with in society. Public speakers were also urged to not show emotion in their faces. The general rule of thumb for this was to let just enough expression through so your audience could see your point of view on things. Unlike today, many people were willing to sit through a speech that was not normally interesting to them, as long as the presentation had proper poise and elocution skills. When etiquette became widespread in the Renaissance period, it brought a new form of self-restraint and bodily shame to society. It became more widespread across the middle class during the 1700s. Since then, etiquette has remained central to all successful civilizations. Etiquette was so important during this time that it was said to have been more important than the law. Etiquette dictates what utensils you use. Would you show up to a nice dinner and expect to use your feet as spoons? This is why etiquette is so important. Without it, we would be lost in society and on our own. Obviously, some areas of today's etiquette will become outdated. In the day of its prime, etiquette used to include dancing skills. In this time, we do not have to deal with slaves or etiquette for riding horse-drawn carriages. We do not have to force ourselves into drinking something we don't like every day to be seen as civilized. Most of us do not solely take classes on ridding ourselves of regional accents to fit in better in our own country. Books are no longer written just about standard etiquette, but for basically anything imaginable, including cell phone etiquette, computer etiquette, and sports. Some of these changes are useful, however. For instance, many people do not travel internationally then, but now cultural-based books are helpful. Etiquette also changed in another very progressive way: women's rights. In past centuries, women could not walk alone without another man or woman accompanying her. Now this is not considered a breach of etiquette, but a safety concern. Men also used to view women as the weaker gender, but now that is not the case. Wars, inventions, political upheavals, and repercussions all influence social etiquette. Dressing properly was one of the most common aspects of being able to present yourself in public. The 1700s dress code was very strict and determined which social circles you were in. Back then, men showed off much more than women in their dress and style. Unlike today, men's wigs could explain what profession they were in. Hair for women stopped being covered and changed into elaborate hairdos. They were so large and hard to do that women would rest their heads on wooden blocks to keep them in shape. The use of democracy in the 1800s led to major style changes being simpler, with less frills and patterns. Some things never change, however. Like today, the middle class tried to copy the fashions of those higher in society. In modern society, these rules are much more lenient. We no longer copy the fashions of the French. Most people do not wear petticoats or skirts that brush the floor. We still have some etiquette revolving around clothing. Unfortunately, most of the good rules are not used anymore. Etiquette has always been important for societies, and I don't see why now should be any different. Without etiquette, we may be running around with no rules on how to act. Imagine, 100 years from now, the simple words please or thank you, one kindergartners taught in their youth, may become just as extinct from our language as thou or thee.